If you are a black or Latino teenager in Cook County, you're most likely unemployed. That's according to a new study by the Great Cities Institute at UIC. As a matter of fact, Cook County leads the nation when it comes to unemployed young people. Even comparing the county to the rest of Illinois, we're lagging behind when it comes to providing jobs for young people of color. And that high unemployment rate snowballs into everything from kids who aren't prepared for adulthood to violence in our neighborhoods. Joining me now with more on the numbers and what's being done to make a dent in the problem are Teresa Cordova. She's director of the Great Cities Institute at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And Jack Wiest is executive director of the Alternative Schools Network. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Jack. This was a study that was commissioned by the Alternative Schools Network. Why did you guys want this study?
We wanted to highlight what we see on the streets in the neighborhoods in Chicago, and we know in the suburbs, especially the southern suburbs of Chicago, that lots of young people need opportunities for jobs when they're teenagers but don't have them. Middle class and upper class kids have jobs when they're working in high school, as long as it doesn't interfere with their high school work. It's an important thing that they can learn how to work in the real world and learn how to get along with people. If you work less as a teenager, you're much less likely to work as a young adult and an adult, and the consequences are really severe for the kids personally, but also there's a link to violence by not having jobs. University of Chicago has done an interesting study showing that summer jobs helps reduce violence, that it hurts the kids, it makes the neighborhoods unsafe, less safer, then doesn't help businesses because you're not building a strong workforce and hurts the economy.
Teresa, there were two groups that were looked at, 16 to 19-year-olds, 20 to 24-year-olds. The last time this was looked at was in 2005, almost or more than 10 years ago. Was there anything surprising for you?
Well, first of all, the fact that there's a decline, continued decline, and even though there is some recovery after the recession, the numbers in 2014 compared to 2005 are still down with respect to employment for these age groups since 2005.
When you break down the groups, when you look at African Americans, 16 to 19, and Latinos, and then whites, it looks like the white group saw almost a 10% drop.
When you look at whites, yes, there was a drop, and they have the highest drop. However, even with that drop, whites in Cook County still fare better than other groups, not only in Cook County, but in the Illinois, the U.S., and the other cities the other counties that we looked at. So the counties that hold the highest population of cities, the largest cities, which would include the area that includes New York City, Los Angeles, and Houston, when we look at those counties, when we look at Illinois figures, U.S. figures, whites in Cook County fare better, blacks fare considerably worse.
Is this primarily, do you think, Jack, because of the different economies in the areas of Cook County, the north and northwest parts of Cook County versus the south and the southwest?
Yeah, I mean, the economies, the neighborhoods just are not, they don't have jobs. They're not strong economies. Yeah, absolutely. If there are no jobs, the research has been clear going back 40, 50 years that kids who are in poor neighborhoods obviously don't have the connection to the labor market and connections. They don't have the aunts and uncles who might know about a job like in a middle class or upper class neighborhood that has those opportunities. Yeah, so there are fewer jobs. The kids showing about 90%, almost 90% of black teens that don't have jobs, and about 1 out of 2 of young black men in Cook County and across the city don't have jobs. Yeah, there's I think race plays a factor in it, but they're living in neighborhoods that are very poor, and they're very poor because they don't have the opportunities for jobs. There's just not a healthy economy in those neighborhoods.
We saw the Great Recession in 2008, but what has happened between 2005 and this new study in terms of opportunities for kids, for young people, let's say?
Just a little history. From 1964, when there were riots in Newark, up through 2000, at the end of the Clinton administration, there were summer jobs. There was a federally funded summer jobs program that would employ low income, targeted by their income, about 625,000 kids a year. That ended in 2000. So the opportunities ended. So a whole rolling group of kids, 16, 17, 18, 19, who might have had jobs in 2000, didn't have it in 2001, going all the way forward. The only time there's been any kind of commitment of funding was the recession money, anti-recession money, 2009 and 10 and employed about 200,000 or 300,000 kids from the federal government. There's been some much smaller programs by the state, and Mayor Manuel's got 24,000 kids who are working through a program called One Summer Chicago, but it's not targeted to low-income kids, and that's where we really need to target this program.
So, Teresa, historically, how has this money been used? I would imagine that some people listening might be thinking, well, when my kid goes out to get a part-time job, they go to the McDonald's or they get a job maybe as a camp counselor. What's been the role of this? How is this money how has this money been used?
Well, let me first of all highlight and express my appreciation on the geographic aspect of this, because one of the things that this new data shows is the big gap between north and south suburbs,
Right.
and it shows us that the joblessness is higher in those areas that have experienced deindustrialization, where they've had a lot of job loss. So the trends we're talking about don't just go back to 2005; they really go back further. We're really talking about 40 years.
So we're talking about when we had those manufacturing jobs, we could expect young people who weren't on a college track to take those jobs.
That's right. There was more opportunity, and we refer to a lot of these neighborhoods as economically abandoned sectors, because when you have the job loss and the anchor employment in those areas, it means there isn't money flowing through the neighborhood at all. So it's going to affect your commercial
Right.
activity,
Right.
your retail. It's going to affect your other small business sector, and so the impact that it has is for the community itself. So the individual who doesn't have a job is affected, as is his or her family, household, but the community overall. And then it becomes a cycle, and it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. So those areas where there isn't capital investment are also the areas that need it the most. And the conditions that lack of investment creates are the very reason why you don't see more investment. So it becomes then a cycle, not only for the individual, but a cycle for the community itself.
We're talking about joblessness among young people, primarily 16 to 24-year-olds, people of color. Here on the morning shift, that is Teresa Cordova. She is the director of the Great Cities Institute at UIC. Jack Wiest is executive director of the Alternative Schools Network. I want to get back to how the money from the federal government has been used and why that has been an important component to making sure young people get jobs.
Well, one of the things that we know, for example, is that employment subsidy programs can work. They have worked.
Mm-hmm.
And even with the recovery money after the recession, and this is something that was pointed out in a New York Times editorial that was a jump off of our study from January. They talk about the impact of some of these subsidy programs for enhancing employment opportunities. They do work. They do lead to further employment. So in that sense, they are gateways. So we know from the 30s, the way we got out of the Depression, for example, that these kinds of programs were very successful. They led not only to employment opportunities, but they led to rebuilding infrastructure in our cities and across the country.
The other thing is that I think Mayor Emanuel, having worked in the Obama administration when they did the anti-recession, understood, because there was a $1.2 billion investment in 2009 and 10, understood the need, and he's increased the summer jobs really well in the city. We just hope he can, his staff needs to reconsider what they're targeting now, because he wants to reduce violence. And the way to really reduce violence is to get the toughest kids off the street. Without an income test, you don't do that right now. All the other kind of summer jobs programs used to do that. But he's taken good steps. We just need to tweak it to really go after those kids who are going to be the bigger threat in the neighborhoods in the summer.
Jack, part of this group includes kids who are not only don't have a job, but are not in school. And when you think about 16, 17, 18, that is still high school. What sorts of efforts are being undertaken to, okay, so there are no jobs, let's at least focus on this group to either get them back in school or get them in some sort of program where they're not getting a paycheck, but they're still learning some skills.
Right. And we had a state task force that was chaired by Jesse Ruiz, who was the former interim CEO of the board and then was chair of the State Board of Ed. It worked from 2006 to 2008, went around the state, lots of hearings, and came up with a plan for programs that would re-enroll high school dropouts in the city. There's a program called Youth Connection Charter School. It was started with Paul Vallis in 1997 that has now 4,000 openings, serves about 5,700 kids, as you're talking about. That needs to be expanded. And we, unfortunately, under Barbara Byrd Bennett, they expanded programs that were very short-term, only 3 hours a day and for profits. It was not the way they should have gone. We hope that there can be a reconsideration of expanding more of these community-based comprehensive programs that offer lots of support services. It's been well documented by Sarah Karp and Becky Vivi the problems of the for-profit schools that didn't really do the work well with the kids. But you're right, you need to get these kids off the street who are 16, 17, 18, give them education and give them some jobs.
Teresa, I want to get back to some of the numbers and the fact that they, according to the report, the picture is more dismal than places like New York and L.A. Do we know what L.A. and New York are doing that their numbers are lower than ours?
I think we're not seeing as extreme segregation, so I think the spatial aspect is probably very key to that, so that we can see the areas where the joblessness is very concentrated. And even when we look at particular neighborhoods comparing New York and L.A., you'll see more concentration of joblessness. So I think that long history of segregation probably is playing out. I suspect we also may be exporting more of our jobs, and so that there may be more jobs that are leaving the area. And we need to be thinking about strategies that are going to keep jobs in the city, in the county, and in the region.
So absent a hand from the government, whether it's local, state, or federal, Jack, what is the private sector doing to help with that?
The private sector obviously needs to look at the kind of programs they can support that train kids in a regular routine of attending something. And if the kid's out of school and out of work, they're not going to suddenly just go take a job in a private sector job because they don't have the routine. They don't get up on time. They don't go to school regularly. They don't have those social skills and all that sort of thing. So there needs to be that kind of preparatory work that, again, programs like you mentioned, what is there for the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, like Youth Connection Charter School, does that work. And then you get the kids kind of socialized and their skills up, and then they're ready to take a routine of a job. And you learn in school how to get along with people. You need those kind of social skills as well as the academic skills, but the social skills particularly with work, so you don't tell flip off your employer and things like that, so that they can keep those jobs. We do a lot of job placement with people, older kids in the private sector, and they have to be prepared of presenting themselves, how they talk to people, working together with people. And those are the kinds of things that I think private sector, as they open up jobs for kids, there's going to be those preface jobs or preface work that needs to be done too.
Before I let you go, what is the summer looking like? Can either of you talk about what we're expecting in terms of summer jobs?
Right now, the state, there's going to be a hearing on summer youth employment jobs by Senator Maddie Hunter. It's going to be April 28th at the Michael Blandick building from 1 until 3. They're going to push to get summer funding from the state. There was summer funding last year, but it was eliminated in the state budget because of the problems in the budget. Again, the mayor has done $24,000. We just hope it can target it more of the low-income kids. And there's going to be a push at the national level. We're not sure what the Republicans have said, but we know the Democrats see this as a real issue and are focusing on it.
Just to give you a sense of the numbers for 2014, the last date in the study the last date that was available for the study, 12.9% for young black men and women 16 to 19 years old. For Hispanics, 21.6%, and for the white population, 26.2%. We've been talking about a persistent problem, unemployment among young people 16 to 24-year-old, particularly hitting hard for people of color. Joining me for the conversation, Teresa Cordova. She is the director of the Great Cities Institute at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Jack Wiest, executive director of the Alternative Schools Network. Thank you so much for joining
Thanks for
me.
having us.